The air in the subterranean archive of the Vatican was thick with the scent of aged parchment and dust, a stillness broken only by the scratch of Dr. Elias Thorne's pencil. Elias was not a priest, nor a historian in the traditional sense. He was a paleo-cartographer, a man obsessed with maps predating the accepted dawn of discovery. He sat hunched over the Mappa Mundi, a colossal 13th century chart spread across a custom-built table. But his attention was focused not on the familiar coastlines, but on a smaller, separate fragment tucked away in a velvet-lined box, the Piri Reis fragment, famed for its inexplicable detail of the Antarctic coast centuries before its official discovery. "Incredible," Elias murmured, adjusting his spectacles. He wasn't looking at the familiar markings, he was looking beneath them. Using a newly acquired multispectral scanner, a loan he'd practically begged for from the University of London, he was peeling back layers of ink and aging varnish. The scanner display flickered, illuminating the ancient vellum. A second layer of drawing emerged, subtle and faint, overlaid by the 16th century Ottoman lines. It wasn't standard Latin, Greek, or Arabic. It was a language of elegant, sweeping curves and geometric precision, unlike any pre-Columbian script he had ever encountered. It looked more like a complex wiring diagram than a written tongue. "Dr. Thorne, are you certain this machine won't damage the artifact?" Father Eduardo Rossi, the archive's meticulous curator, hovered nervously near the door. "Perfectly safe, Father. It's non-invasive. And I believe I found what the original cartographer was trying to hide." He pointed to the display. "Look, the Piri Reis Map shows the coastline of Queen Maud Land, ice-free. Impossible for the 16th century. Conventional theory says the source was an ancient Greek map lost to time." "And you disagree with Greek?" Rossi asked, stepping closer, his apprehension giving way to curiosity. "I disagree with Greek," Elias stated, tracing the newly revealed script. "The Greeks used simple ciphers. This is something else. It's an instruction manual disguised as a language, and the map isn't just a geography lesson, it's a schematic."
The hidden script repeated across the fragment, consistently marking points that corresponded not to major ports or cities, but to specific magnetic anomalies Elias knew existed beneath the deep ice of Antarctica. Suddenly, a pattern solidified on the screen, transcending the script itself. It was a complex, five-sided glyph, the hidden key symbol. As he zoomed in, he noticed something chillingly modern. A set of coordinates written in base 12, mathematically perfect, leading to a remote, utterly inaccessible plateau in the Tibetan Himalayas. "Father," Elias said, his voice hushed with the weight of realization. "This map wasn't drawn by a forgotten civilization. It was copied from them. This isn't history. This is a warning." The unveiling of the Codex. Elias secured his findings, high-resolution scans, notes, and the cryptographic analysis of the newly revealed script, and prepared to leave the Vatican. But the Secret Codex, as he privately named it, had already drawn unwanted attention. Waiting for him outside the archive gates was a sleek black sedan. A man stepped out, tall and immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit with eyes that seemed to belong to a much older, colder person. "Dr. Thorne?" The man's voice was smooth, American accented, and devoid of warmth. "I represent an organization interested in historical preservation. I have no interest in selling my research, Mr. Vance." "Oh, we don't buy, Doctor." Vance smiled, a predatory expression that didn't reach his eyes. "We assimilate. We know what you found on the Piri Reis fragment. The coordinates, The symbols, the language you call the architect's script. We've been looking for the source material for decades. Vance's knowledge was too specific, too instant. He realized his access had been compromised, possibly since he first requested the spectral scanner. You won't find what you're looking for, Elias deflected, attempting to walk past. It's theoretical nonsense. Vance blocked his path. The five-sided glyph, Doctor. The Star of Soter. It's the key to the entire network of hidden knowledge. The map is just one piece of a global system. We need you to translate the rest of the Codex. Codex? It is not a single book, Dr. Thorne. It is an interlocking library of symbols, maps, and technologies scattered across the globe. You have found the primary nexus. We are taking you there. Elias knew then that if he went with Vance, the knowledge would be lost to a shadowy power intent on hoarding it. He spun quickly, using the briefest window of distraction to bolt into the crowded street, the briefcase slamming into a fruit stall, drawing the attention of passers-by. He vanished into the Roman crowd, hailing a taxi and giving a destination far from the airport. The primary nexus, a glacier's embrace. Days later, having covertly flown into Kathmandu and hired a reliable, if bewildered, guide named Tenzing, Elias found himself struggling through the bitter, thin air of the Annapurna Range. His coordinates led him not to a high mountain monastery, but to a seemingly empty, frozen plateau far above the tree line. "This is it, Tenzing. According to the map, the entrance should be here," Elias gasped, his lungs burning from the altitude, pointing to the exact spot where the coordinates intersected. Tenzing, a man whose family had guided expeditions for generations, shook his head, wrapped tightly in yak wool. "Sahib, there is nothing here but rock and ice. No trail, no cave. My grandfather's maps show only the White Walker's Ridge." Elias produced a portable magnetic flux detector. He knew the coordinates marked a location of unusually high geomagnetic activity, an invisible signature far too regular to be natural. The Piri Reis Map wasn't showing geography, it was showing energy conduits. He checked the reading. The signal was strong, too strong. It was emanating not from the rock, but from the glacier ice itself. "The entrance isn't in the mountain, Tenzing. It's under the ice." Elias strapped on a small modified seismic resonator and aimed it at the glacier ice sheet. He activated the device, sending precisely calibrated low-frequency vibrations into the glacier. The goal was simple: match the natural frequency of the ancient structure and cause a temporary, localized collapse of the surrounding ice structure. For a terrifying minute, the air was filled with a low, groaning sound, like the earth clearing its throat. Then, with a sudden, deafening crack, a huge segment of the ice sheet fractured and slid away, revealing a perfect, black opening beneath.
It was a structure carved not of stone, but of a dark, obsidian-like composite material, seamless and impossibly smooth. The doorway was a flawless arch, framed by the five-sided Star of Soter glyph. "This is not built by human hands," Tenzing whispered, crossing himself with trembling fingers. Elias stepped inside. The air instantly became warmer, drier, and breathable. The structure was lit by a soft, constant inner glow that pulsed from the walls themselves, illuminating corridors lined with the same sweeping, elegant script he had first seen on the Piri Reis fragment. The Library of the Architects. The structure was a vast, subterranean complex, a technological marvel built into the heart of the mountain. It was a perfectly preserved library, a repository of advanced knowledge constructed millennia before the pharaohs. He moved quickly through the halls until he reached the central chamber, the primary nexus. In the center stood a towering crystalline obelisk, crackling faintly with contained energy. Around it, instead of books, were thousands of flat, smooth tablets made of the same dark composite. These were the true books of the Codex. Elias touched the closest tablet. Instantly, the script on its surface illuminated, and a three-dimensional holographic projection sprang into the air above it. It was a map of the solar system, rendered with stunning accuracy. But there was a difference. The projection showed an additional planet orbiting between Mars and Jupiter, a large, fertile world now vanished, and it was marked with the star of Soter. He moved to another tablet. This time the projection showed a complex equation not for flight, but for localized gravitational manipulation, the blueprint for anti-gravity propulsion hidden in plain sight. The third tablet was the most disturbing. It showed a time-lapse projection of human history, but not as we know it. It depicted two distinct timelines, the recognized history of struggle and slow technological growth, and a hidden, older timeline of sudden advanced civilization, followed by a cataclysmic collapse. The collapse was shown as a massive asteroid impact, followed by immediate widespread global freezing, the event that created the Ice Age, but this time framed as an abrupt singular catastrophe. The hidden civilization, the architects, had simply vanished beneath the ice, leaving only their knowledge. As Elias tried to document the holographic projections with his camera, a sudden heavy pressure settled over the complex. The soft inner glow intensified, turning amber. The building was reacting to an external presence. He heard the crunch of specialized boots on the stone floor. Vance and 3 heavily armed security men had found the nexus. They must have followed the same magnetic flux signature. "You've been a great help, Dr. Thorne," Vance said, stepping into the chamber, a small satellite phone pressed to his ear. "But this translation work ends here. This knowledge is too powerful for the chaotic hands of academia. It belongs to the Order of the Soter, the ones who preserved these maps for millennia." "You are not preserving anything, Vance," Elias countered, his heart pounding. "You're hoarding it. This technology was left as a legacy, not a weapon." "The architects were naive," Vance sneered, holstering his gun. "They thought knowledge would save them. It didn't. Power saves. And now we have the heart of their power. This." Vance pointed to the crystalline obelisk. The phone call concluded, he gave a crisp order. "Deploy the extraction frame. Secure the central core." 2 of the guards moved toward the obelisk, producing specialized tools. Elias realized Vance wasn't interested in the tablets. He was interested in the power source. "Wait!" Elias yelled. "You don't understand the energy systems. The script warns that if the core is moved without precise calibration, the magnetic field will destabilize, potentially triggering a localized massive seismic event." Vance merely laughed. "A risk we are willing to take for power that can rewrite the world order." As the guards began working on the base of the obelisk, the amber light in the chamber turned a furious flashing red. The energy contained within the crystal began to visibly surge, causing the very structure of the ancient nexus to vibrate. The hidden language on the walls was no longer a silent script. It was pulsing with light, a desperate final warning. Elias knew he couldn't fight armed men, but he could fight with the knowledge he had just unlocked. He ran to the holographic tablet that displayed the gravity manipulation equation.
"Tenzing, get out!" he shouted, realizing his guide had wisely stayed near the entrance. Elias frantically input a sequence of commands, translating the architect's script in his head, using the gravity equation and the Star of Soter symbol as a mathematical key. He wasn't trying to activate a weapon, but a defense mechanism he saw hinted at in the deeper layers of the magnetic maps. An emergency system reset tied to the integrity of the nexus itself. He touched the Star of Soter glyph on the wall near the map tablet, and the chamber erupted in a blinding flash of white light. The ground beneath their feet didn't just shake, it buckled. A high-pitched, resonant frequency tore through the air, and for a terrifying moment, Elias felt his entire body lighten, the effect of the gravity equation being momentarily applied to the chamber itself. Vance and his men stumbled, disoriented. The obelisk, momentarily dislodged by the seismic and gravitational spike, began to power down rapidly, its red light fading to black. Elias used the confusion to his advantage. He grabbed the small, vital tablet displaying the gravity equation, the blueprint for the lost technology, and bolted toward the entrance, disappearing into the dark corridor. He heard Vance's furious shout echo behind him. "Find him! Don't let him escape with the key!" Elias scrambled back toward the entrance, the ancient nexus groaning around him. He knew the building was unstable, the integrity of the mountain shattered. He had the equation, the most advanced secret of the ancients, but he was trapped under a collapsing glacier with a deadly enemy close behind. Elias burst out of the chamber and into the cold, thin air of the plateau, just as the entrance began to seal itself with a shower of falling ice and rock, the mountain reclaiming its secret. Tenzing, seeing the imminent collapse, had fled down the path. Elias was alone, with the priceless tablet clutched tightly in his hand, the wind whipping around him, and the desperate realization that his discovery was now a death sentence. The Codex was real. It detailed not a glorious past, but a recycled present, where advanced knowledge was constantly lost and rediscovered, waiting to be exploited, and the forces that wanted to bury it were now hunting him across the roof of the world.
Elias plunged down the steep, icy slope, his lungs screaming for air. The crystalline tablet, still warm and vibrating faintly, was jammed securely inside his coat. Above him, the entrance to the nexus was rapidly vanishing under tons of falling ice. He could hear faint, furious shouting. Vance and his men were trapped, at least for the moment. The localized seismic event Elias had triggered was his only defense. It bought him minutes, perhaps hours, but not freedom. He had to get off the mountain before Vance could deploy a team capable of penetrating the collapsing glacier. He found Tenzing sheltering behind a large boulder, his face pale with terror and awe. "Sahib, the mountain! It swallowed the place! What devilry was that?" Tenzing whispered, watching the steam rise from the freshly broken ice. "It was not devilry, Tenzing," Elias managed, pulling himself upright. "It was ancient science, and the men who are trapped want to kill me for what I know. We must move, now." They descended the mountain through the night, using secondary paths Tenzing knew, bypassing the standard routes where Vance's organization, the Order of the Soter, would certainly post lookouts. By dawn, they reached a tiny deserted village at a lower altitude, a few forgotten huts used by shepherds in the summer months. While Tenzing secured a way to contact a reliable network of high-altitude porters, a covert escape route, Elias used the precious few hours to examine the tablet. The tablet was not merely displaying the anti-gravity equation, it was the key translator. Its core function was to translate the sweeping, curved architect script into a simplified yet mathematically consistent form of Latin text. Elias focused the translator on the main holographic display, the historical time-lapse. He activated the translation function, and the text that appeared shocked him far more than the technology itself. The cycle of ruin. They forget the sky. They forget the warnings. After 10,000 revolutions of the great star, the great water will rise, not from the poles, but from within the earth itself. We built the shelters, the nexus points, not to survive the end, but to ensure the beginning is preserved. The gravity key must remain buried until the third warning. The message was clear. The cataclysm that destroyed the architects was cyclical, a natural consequence of planetary instability, and it was coming again. The advanced knowledge, the Codex, was not a collection of inventions, but a doomsday survival guide. But what was the third warning? Elias searched the tablet further. Beneath the history lesson, he found a separate, heavily encrypted file, accessible only by combining the gravity equation with the five-sided star of Soderglyph. This was the true secret, the final layer of the Codex. He spent an hour inputting the combination, his fingers flying across the crystalline surface. Finally, the screen flashed. The hidden file opened, displaying a short, devastating message. Third warning activated. System status critical. Activation event detected. Core resonance signature 7.0 man-made. Time to re-entry of Great Water 47 standard Earth cycles. 47 standard Earth cycles. 47 years. Elias staggered back. The destruction of the architect's civilization was imminent again, and the man-made core resonance signature 7.0 could only refer to the global proliferation of nuclear energy and deep-sea drilling, which was disrupting the very stability the architects had tried to manage. The Codex was not a relic, it was a ticking clock. The Order of the Soter and the Hunt. His moment of profound realization was brutally interrupted. The distant low throb of rotor blades echoed through the high valley. Vance hadn't been trapped for long. Elias grabbed his gear and the tablet. Tenzing, the helicopter, they found us. Go, Sahib, you go. Tenzing urgently pushed Elias toward a narrow, almost invisible trail leading down a gorge. I will delay them. The Soter men know only the mountains I allow them to know. Elias hesitated, but the roar of the helicopter was deafening. He knew Tenzing, a man loyal to the spirit of the mountains, would not abandon him, but would fight in his own way. Thank you, my friend. I will not let this knowledge be wasted, Elias vowed, and he plunged down the narrow path, disappearing into the cover of the gorge. The helicopter descended, landing near the deserted huts. Silas Vance and his two remaining men, their faces grim from the collapse, quickly located Tenzing. Where is the doctor and the tablet? Vance demanded, holding his rifle steady. Tenzing stood defiant. The mountain swallowed him. You should have stayed and prayed. The architects do not reward greed. Vance didn't waste time on threats. He knew Tenzing was stalling. He pulled out a specialized tracking device that glowed faintly. The core resonance signature, the tablet, it has a passive magnetic trace. You can't hide it from us forever. The device beeped rapidly, pointing directly into the gorge. He's heading for the river, Vance snapped. He thinks the water will mask the trace. Fool, he's buying us time. The bridge and the cipher. Elias moved with a desperation he hadn't known since his youth. The gravity key tablet felt like a burning coal in his hands, a heavy burden of global consequence. He reached the end of the gorge, where a treacherous, decaying rope bridge spanned a churning glacial river. Crossing it was near suicidal, but it was his only chance to break the line of sight and gain precious ground before the tracker could zero in. As he reached the center of the swaying bridge, the helicopter appeared, banking sharply overhead, its searchlight blinding him. Vance's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Dr. Thorne, stop! Hand over the tablet! You cannot outrun the order!" Elias knew he was out of options. He couldn't carry the physical tablet and survive the crossing and the ensuing fall if he lost his footing. He had to transmit the key knowledge. He activated the gravity tablet one last time. He focused on the most critical piece of information, the emergency activation sequence that could potentially shut down the dangerous man-made resonance, buying humanity time. It was a complex sequence of 7 nested mathematical formulas hidden within the original anti-gravity equation. With the helicopter searchlight fixed on him, Elias began furiously tapping the code onto the tablet, not just translating it, but transcribing it into a cipher using his own body, a memory palace, assigning each of the 7 formulas to one of the 7 chakras, or energy centers, a technique he learned studying esoteric language structures. Formula 1. root, stability. Formula 2, sacral, flow. Formula 3, solar plexus, power, and so on. As he finished the 7th formula, a bullet whizzed past his ear, hitting the rope next to his hand. The bridge shrieked and began to tear loose. Elias made a split-second decision. He could not let the complete codex fall into Vance's hands, but the knowledge must survive. He pressed a final sequence on the tablet, activating a function he had identified earlier, self-immolation protocol. With a final act of defiance, he tossed the crystalline tablet into the glacial torrent below. It hit the water with a sizzle, and before it sank, it dissolved in a flash of bright magnetic energy, leaving nothing but steam and silence. Vance screamed in rage from the helicopter. "No! The knowledge! You idiot!" But Elias was already gone. He swung, grabbing a frayed secondary rope, and dropped into the roaring river below, trusting the violent flow to carry him into the lower, denser forest where the helicopter could not follow. He was battered, bruised, and bleeding, but he had survived. The physical codex was destroyed, but its ultimate secret, the 7 formulae of the emergency shutdown key, was now encoded indelibly in his mind. He knew his life was forfeit, but the final task remained. He had 47 years to find the means to implement the architect's final warning. He had to find a way to convey the most advanced secret in human history, the knowledge that our modern technology was about to trigger the next cataclysm without being dismissed as a lunatic, or worse, captured by the relentless order of the Soter. The fight for the world's future had just begun, and the single remaining piece of the Secret Codex was the memory of one man.
He recovered slowly, physically scarred, but mentally sharper than ever. Silas Vance and the Order of the Soster continued their relentless hunt, but they were searching for a magnetic signature that no longer existed. Elias Thorne, the celebrated paleo-cartographer, was officially declared missing, presumed dead in a mountaineering accident. The architect of the future. Elias understood that the physical destruction of the tablet was his rebirth. He was no longer a professor. He was a living archive, the only carrier of the final critical message of the architects. He adopted a new identity and began a clandestine life, moving across borders, always staying one step ahead of the shadows he knew were following him. His mission was twofold: disseminate the language. He had to seed the advanced knowledge, the grammar of the architect script, into the world's academic system in a way that seemed like random, obscure discovery. He wrote 5 anonymous papers over a decade, published in esoteric journals of cryptology and particle physics, each one focusing on a different aspect of the 7 formulae, disguised as theoretical mathematical frameworks. He scattered the pieces, ensuring no single piece was enough to be dangerous, but collectively they would guide the right minds. Locate the implementation nexus. The architect's warning stated that the emergency shutdown sequence, the 7 formulae, could only be implemented at a subnexus connected to the global seismic grid, a site capable of neutralizing man-made core resonance. Using his fragmented knowledge of the magnetic maps, Elias dedicated the next 20 years to searching for this second site. His search led him not to another icy peak, but to the deepest, most stable part of the planet, the Pacific seabed.
Elias was now 65, a man aged beyond his years by the weight of a dying planet's secret. He had spent his final savings and years working as a technical consultant for deep-sea surveying companies, always guiding the ships subtly toward a single, vast oceanic trench off the coast of New Zealand. He finally found it.
Using a remotely operated underwater vehicle, ROV, he identified a massive dome-like structure built into the abyssal plain, invisible to sonar due to a dampening field. It was the subnexus, the only location where the architect's emergency protocol could be activated. The five-sided star of Soter was carved into its primary hatch. He had successfully sown the seeds of the knowledge. Now he needed to find the people capable of understanding and acting upon it. He used his final, most dangerous tool, a meticulously preserved microfiche of the original Piri Reis fragment scans, which he had saved before fleeing the Vatican. On it, he highlighted the 7 specific magnetic anomaly points that corresponded to the 7 formulae now burned into his memory. He anonymously sent the microfiche to a young, brilliant, but marginalized astrophysicist, Dr. Aisha Khan, whose own controversial papers on geomagnetic shifts echoed the architect's own warnings. Along with the microfiche, Elias included a short, cryptic note. The coastline lies, but the 7 lights beneath the water tell the truth. Combine the grammar of the architects, reference J.Theoretical Math, Volume 42, with the 7 lights. The third warning is active. Time left, 27 cycles. The torch is passed. Elias watched the news cycle closely. Within 6 months, Dr. Khan published a preliminary paper that took the academic world by storm. She had not only cracked the 7 embedded formulae Elias had planted over the years, but using the highlighted points on the Piri Reis fragment, she had deduced their purpose, a planetary stability model and an activation key. However, Dr. Khan's paper also drew the immediate, terrifying attention of the Order of the Soter. The inevitable happened. One quiet afternoon, 2 decades after the fateful day on the Tibetan plateau, Elias was cornered in a secluded park in Buenos Aires. Silas Vance, now older, leaner, and bearing a scar across his eye, stepped out of the shadows. "Dr. Thorne, you've been busy."
Vance, Elias acknowledged, utterly calm. He had anticipated this day. "You destroyed the Codex, but you spread its filth," Vance spat, his voice laced with decades of frustrated pursuit. "Now we have a name, Dr. Aisha Khan. She has the map. We will find her, silence her, and bury the knowledge with the rest of your generation's stupid mistakes." Elias smiled, a gentle, weary smile. "You're too late, Silas. You wanted to hoard the knowledge as power. The architects wanted it to be shared as salvation." He looked at the sky, the true sky the architects had warned them to remember. The Codex is no longer a tablet or a secret society, Vance. It is a chain of minds. As 2 of Vance's operatives moved to seize him, Elias, with his last ounce of strength, performed a small, deliberate movement, a finger tap sequence he had practiced for years. It was the final hidden defense mechanism of the living Codex, a pre-programmed distress signal sent via a heavily encrypted satellite burst. It contained only one location, the sub-nexus coordinates, and the name Dr. Aisha Khan. Elias was apprehended. The legacy he carried was silenced. But thousands of miles away, Dr. Khan received the encrypted transmission on her secure line. She saw the coordinates for the abyssal structure and the final crushing truth of Elias's work. She understood. She was the one who would now have to attempt the impossible, descend into the darkness and activate the emergency key before the 47 cycles expired. The Secret Codex of the ancients was no longer history. It was the blueprint for humanity's survival, passed from a cartographer to an astrophysicist, in a race against the apocalyptic knowledge that had been hidden since the last time the world ended. The legacy of advanced knowledge, once lost, was now in motion.